Hola clase. This is our last grammar unit for Spanish 102, and it's an introduction to the present subjunctive. This is only an introduction. Here we're going to learn how to conjugate the forms. We're going to learn one use of the subjunctive versus indicative. It's an introduction to this new tense and mode of the verbs, which we will study in depth in 201. In fact, the majority of 201 is a study of the subjunctive, many uses of this mood. So you can read a little bit about what a mood is, and the forms are similar to the formal commands. That is, the procedure for getting the form, the first form, the yo form, is the same as with the formal commands that we just studied in the previous unit. The only difference, of course, in terms of forms, is that the subjunctive has all 6 endings. If you remember, the commands had only third-person endings. Let's say this was estudiar, the formal command was estudie and estudien. If this was escribir, the formal command was escriba, escriban. But the present subjunctive has all 6 forms. It's a full conjugation. Bien? So again, the 2 form, camines, nosotros, digamos, yo duerma. So you can see that some of these irregularities, like the G and the UE, are found in the other forms of the verb. We'll look at dormir a little bit more in depth in a bit. So here we've compared to the indicative. Since you're very familiar now with the present tense indicative, you've used it all throughout 101. And in addition to the preterite and imperfect this semester, you've used the present tense quite a bit as well. So it should be very comfortable for you. And by comparing the two, you can start to get a sense for the sound of the subjunctive. So, for instance, comenzar, comienzo, comienzas, comienza, comenzamos, comenzáis, comienza. Present subjunctive, comience, comiences, comience, comencemos, comencéis, comience. It's important when you study the subjunctive to compare it to the indicative. Bien? So you can see the differences. Same with empacar. Empaco, empacas, empaca, etc. Empaque, empaques, empaque. So again, we talked about the spelling change in the context of formal commands as well as preterite earlier this semester. And here you see it again. Muy bien. So here you have ER verbs, some ER verbs that have stem changes. Notice that the nosotros and vosotros forms don't have a stem change. Tener, the yo irregular with a G, that G is preserved throughout all 6 forms. In the present tense, it occurred only in the yo form, which is why we call them yo irregular back in 101. But this yo irregularity is preserved throughout all 6 forms in the subjunctive. So tenga, tengas, tenga, tengamos, tengáis, tenga. Bien. With stem changing verbs, when the verb is an ir verb, IR verb, and it's stem changing, it has a secondary stem change in the nosotros form. So prefiera, prefieras, prefiera, prefiramos, prefiráis, prefieran. Whereas in the indicative, it had a stem change in the boot form, but no stem change in nosotros and vosotros. In the subjunctive, it has 2 stem changes. The normal one in the boot and the secondary one in nosotros and vosotros. Bien. Finally, you have some irregular verbs, such as saber. Saber, we cannot take this yo form, se. Doesn't give us enough. So we take sep, saber, sepa, sepas, sepa, sepamos, sepáis, sepan. These are irregular. Some other irregular verbs, not surprisingly, ser, ir, dar, and estar, and saber. same as the irregular ones in the formal commands. Okay? And again, just as in the command form, the verb I is haya. Haya. Okay? So we're going to introduce only one use, and probably the easiest use of the indicative versus subjunctive, and this is with impersonal expressions. So we have some expressions that express certainty, such as es cierto, es obvio, es evidente. These will take the indicative in the dependent clause. Es cierto que los buses al museo salen cada media hora. Es obvio que necesitamos bajar del metro en el centro. Es verdad que hay un restaurante japonés cerca de la rotonda. These are expressing truths or certainties, evidences. And you use the indicative in the dependent clause. But if the impersonal expression expresses less than certainty, probability, possibility, negation, uncertainty, then the dependent clause will need to be in the subjunctive. There are many expressions that convey this lack of certainty. Es bueno, es malo, es importante, etc. These will take the subjunctive. So let's take a look at this one. Es bueno. Es bueno que el metro de esta ciudad sea tan limpio. Es bueno expresses an opinion, which isn't expressed as certainty, and therefore we use the subjunctive in the dependent clause. Let's compare that over here. Es verdad. Now I'm expressing the same thing, but I'm expressing it as a truth. Es verdad que el metro de esta ciudad es muy limpio. I'm expressing it as truth, and therefore I use the dependent clause in the indicative. Here, I'm giving a relative opinion, right? It's good. It's good is not the same as it's true, although in English we may think that way. Spanish, it's not. So, es bueno, because I used es bueno, now this secondary verb in the dependent clause has to be in the subjunctive. And so go through these and practice them on Quizlet. And then you can complete some external exercises. This Professor Nelson's website at Colby.edu is excellent for practicing all of the structures that we've taught. When you're comfortable with the subjunctive, then go ahead and do the activities that we've created for you. Bien, hasta luego, clase. Y felicidades por completar el curso.